We good?
I think so.
Cool. Awesome. How you doing?
Good. I'm kind of operating. I have four jobs right now. So I'm kind
Damn.
of like going back and forth between, well, actually I'm procrastinating on everything I have to do, which is really bad.
I feel you there. I find every excuse to go drive to do something else other than sit at home and work.
Yeah, I'm indexing a book right now, so
Oh Lord.
it's fun. I have to be done by the 17th.
Well, I
Um,
don't know how long indexing a book takes, but I hope that that is enough time for you.
Hopefully.
So,
Um,
what do you want to go? I'll let you lead it off.
God, there were so many things I wanted to talk about. I don't know how I actually discovered your stream. I'm pretty new to Twitch. I'm actually 30. I'm probably the oldest person in this chat room.
A few years older than you.
Okay. Well, good to know that there's a fellow elder millennial here.
Yep. Yeah. There are a few
Um,
of us floating around.
cool. So I didn't fully understand the whole Jordan Peterson thing. I kind of found it a little odd. I mean, I do honestly understand that some of Hassan's takes can be pretty much shit.
Yes. So the whole thing going into this is that I saw the video up. I saw a bunch of people talking about it. I'm like, all right, let's see what he's saying. And then within the first few seconds, he says something really that's just not a. He has an approach to his dunks where he's again more performative than informative. And that's my biggest problem. So my first problem in general is that I think people are way too hyperbolic in their criticism of Jordan Peterson. And then my second problem is that Hassan is way too lazy in his criticism of others. And so then we get to this convergence of a great piece of content, which is 3 hours of Hassan demonstrating his performative nature and lack of desire to do any sort of research into what he's debunking. And then also a desire to make a little bit of content that kind of highlights how people hyperbolize Jordan Peterson as a boogeyman figure.
Okay, I guess I just the thing about these people on the right, and I haven't spent a lot of time watching them because no, um, but the thing about them then in the very few times I've honestly watched them is that they have a way of framing things that kind of pulls people in.
Oh yeah, I mean, look at the election stuff, right? One of the biggest
Yeah.
issues we're experiencing is that the right is giving this really unfounded idea that the election was fraudulent and that people in the government are working against them and that Donald Trump is the rightful president. And that only works when you set this idea that media is biased or media is a propaganda machine that's lying to you and working against you. And once you've laid it out, it's much easier for these people to believe complete and utter bullshit. And then you're right, it does suck people in. Tim Pool's business model works entirely off the idea that Tim Pool is one of the few only objective people. Look at him. He's a liberal, and yet here he is defending Donald Trump and taking on left wing media. When you
God,
create
Tim
that
Pool is
narrative, it
still not a
pulls.
liberal.
He's not. I mean, in no justifiable way can he say that. What is he for? Gay marriage? Is he for trans rights? And is he for abortion rights? Cool,
Yeah.
that's fine. But then, what about the rest of society? Like, what about actual liberal values when it comes to progress and growth and fighting for certain people? How, in good faith, can you look at someone like Donald Trump and say that man embodies my liberal values, or my liberal values are not as important as whatever that man is doing?
But I guess like what my point is, like even talking about like some of the things you were saying relating to Jordan Peterson is the stuff like when you were saying he said if blah 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 word vomit spit. It kind of like pulls people in and it twists the argument in a way that people that like I'm obviously I said I'm 30, so I'm 30, but like the people that are like 18, 19, 20 or younger or 21, 22, 23, whatever, what have you, can't quite fully grasp or understand the arguments. They kind of misconstrue what the person is saying, what he's saying. And it kind of gets them in a way that's not good, and then they discover these other people, and then you see them at a alt-right rally.
Well, so
Um,
I think that that kind of makes a few jumps because like what he says here, if we look at the gay marriage conversation, right? If someone like is it possible, is it likely that someone read this and they already didn't want to be in support of gay marriage, and then they read this and now they felt they had something more of an intellectual platform to stand on to continue their anti-gay marriage views? Absolutely. But I think it's I can't in good faith ascribe bad faith to Jordan Peterson's approach here. I don't think he does this in a sense to kind of goad people into some pseudo intellectualism and therefore support his some backwood belief, right? That's
I mean,
been
I'm not
given.
saying that like I'm saying these people are young. They don't have a belief system. They don't know.
Well,
They
they
don't.
do
They
because like I grew up conservative and I had going into my 20s I had anti-gay marriage views. Now I also was very much I want to be clear like I didn't hate gay people. I just believed that in the traditional uh, what do we call it institution of marriage, and that I also fully supported civil unions that gave the every single right. Literally, the only hangup for me was the title marriage, which is probably why it was so easy for me to like give that up and be in support of gay marriage.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely had a very strange upbringing for a kid in the 90s. I had two sets of two different moms.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So, like, but besides that fact, I actually ended up voting for McCain in my first in 2008. Um,
It was much easier to vote for a Republican back then, wasn't it?
I guess I don't know. I mean, I don't think it should have been in hindsight, really. But like, I kind of like jumped when like I heard you say something about the nuclear family.
Mm.
And I don't know entirely what you were saying because I mean, you saw the chat.
Hmm.
I was kind of like going back and forth and arguing with people
Yeah.
about things. So like could you like kind of like God, what's the word I'm looking for? Summarize what you were saying there a little bit because I
I
know it had to do a little bit with Jordan Peterson, but I also know it was kind of your take too.
I'm trying to think of what it was. I think it was I real honest to God I can't remember why I brought it up. I think it was just the idea that shit, were we talking about this one? I think it was the idea that Jordan Peterson believes fuck honest to God I can't tell you. If someone in chat can remind me why I brought up the nuclear family. I mean, my view on the nuclear family though is that yeah, like it is known. Oh, I think that's what I said. For some context in here I said something about like we know that the nuclear family provides a stable environment, but I also later added like we also know that gay households can provide an equally stable environment, right? But we do have a lot of data for people that don't end up in that stable household that's often um, established by having that nuclear family, that mother father figure, etc., and a healthy environment. We do have data that shows the negative outcomes of not growing up in that environment,
I
or there's
guess
a
like
propensity for not if you don't grow up in that environment. Um, there's a propensity for it to lead to some sort of negative in an individual.
I guess my take is like from my perspective, especially in the way that I grew up, really has nothing to do with the gender or sex of your parents at all.
I think that
It
right, and I
does,
think
I think, have to do with like nature versus nurture
hmm
somewhat, which I've kind of grappled with a little bit on my own because of the way that I personally identify.
hmm
Um, and I'm not gonna say that on the stream, but like I you know, all that is, I guess, interesting to me from that front. But I also think it has to do with your personal circumstances, your class. Like, are you wealthy? Are you well off?
hmm
Um, are you in a good neighborhood? Are you in a bad neighborhood? Are
right.
you in a suburban neighborhood? Are you in an urban neighborhood? Are you in on a farm in the middle of the country? Like,
Yeah.
these
Yeah.
things impact you.
Oh yeah, no, yeah. Your zip
Um,
code is one of, if not the biggest determiner of
yeah.
your future as an individual in American society, probably in the world. But yeah, no, and so I'm not educated enough to make any comments about the traditional man, woman, children, nuclear family versus a family with two mothers or two fathers. I don't know if there is specifically on a cis male. Um, I don't know if a cis heterosexual male does or doesn't have something different in male female households versus female female households, right? Where a lack of male influence does have an impact. But I believe that it's often the father figure that is tied to a missing link. And like as I grew up in a household where my dad and mom were divorced before I was ever really conscious of their relationship, and and then he died when I was younger. I like to think I turned out a relatively well-adjusted individual. My mom did a good job raising me, and the statistics don't say that every fucking time someone is raised in a single parent household where it's the mother and you're a male that something bad is going to happen, right? It's just the statistics show a propensity for some sort of negative outcome from that.
Right. And I guess like that kind of comes down to like what you did to help yourself in that area.
Yeah,
Um,
no, and yeah, and what I don't know what I did to help myself, honestly, in any of that. If I did something that was probably more self conscious than anything else, but
and that like on a side note, sort of makes me think like gender is a construct, right? The way people present is a construct. So like for me, I had a dad quotes. I
mhm.
had a mom quote. I mean, and to me, like I was never really without one or the other.
So this is an area where I can't reasonably commentate because I'm totally uneducated. So everything I say beyond this point, and even a little bit of what we've already talked about, is total speculation on my part. But if I'm talking about what Peterson believes, I know he believes the nuclear family is the ultimate construct for developing a well-adjusted individual. Do I
Right.
know his awareness on the gay household? And I'm sorry, does gay? I have always used gay as a male and female term. Is it only supposed to be used for male?
Uh,
Like, as I said, the gay community, and when I say that, I don't mean just gay men. I mean men and gay men, gay
I
women.
would almost call it today just queer. Because that's all encompassing because gay people can be trans. And that could be F to M or M to F.
All right, we'll just say same sex. There we go.
Yeah, you're
Thank
talking to
you.
someone that's a little bit of a nerd for like gender stuff.
Okay, so as far I don't know Jordan Peterson's views on same sex couples. I don't know if he's like if he's put any thought or effort or engaged at all in literature about that. What I do know is that those same sex couples can produce healthy kids. That they, I'm sorry, not can. Let me say they do produce healthy kids. But again, anything beyond this, when it comes to the nuclear family and same sex families, it also feels like weird referring to one as the nuclear family because that comes with an inherent baked in idea of this is right and then saying same sex. So I want to be really clear. I'm not deriding same sex couples. I'm very much in defense of them.
No, I get it. You just don't quite know the verbiage
Well,
and how to.
not just the verbiage, but more the I don't know studies about them. Like I'm not terribly familiar. I'm familiar enough to know that anyone who is against a gay couple or a same sex couple is operating outside of any kind of reality or is operating with usually with some form of bigotry or ignorance. So yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, just to summarize my thing to you, I was just bringing up the nuclear family because it is seen as that, like, the best way to produce a well-adjusted child.
And I think that's just like, I mean, well, not God. I almost said Hassan. I meant Jordan Peterson. God. Um, I don't know. I would just stay far the hell away from people that are just awful.
Yeah,
And like it's interesting to like bring up the Hassan shit takes because one thing I've noticed, like I've been in the so-called movement since I would say like
Camp
2014, 2013.
Camp 1 second. I just want to say thank you, Grugot. I'm not familiar with you, but if we have met, I'm terribly sorry that I forgot. But I really want to say thank you very much for the raid, and hello everyone with the Grago hat. Oh, it's a tinfoil hat. Fuck yeah. Okay, I'm sorry. Continue, please.
No, you're fine. It's interesting because like I've discovered a lot of like people on the left and whatnot in spaces of YouTube and wherever else as commentators, right? And a lot of these people have unfortunately become grifters
Mm-hmm.
and have helped fuel the right more so than helped the left.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you've noticed it, but I'll probably pop off after this just so you can get back to your content.
Oh, you're good.
Like, I mean, some people come to mind like, God, I can't even remember half their names. Kim Iverson, uh, Fiorella Isabel, Craig Pasa of the Combo Couch.
I actually don't know any of these people,
Good.
but
I'm
these are grifters.
they're absolutely total gifters. Like they like Fiorella, I actually met her when I met AOC in December of 2017 before she won her primary. And she was fine then, but now she openly likes at the Epoch Times.
Who's this person?
Uh, she has a Twitter. I think her name is Fiorella underscore Isabel. She blocked me, so I don't know. Um, but she's not good, and that doesn't mean though. See, the thing with grifters, as we know, is they have some good takes that people like myself will agree with, but when they have bad takes, they have bad takes.
Yeah. So with Jordan. So this is my yeah. No, grifters suck. I just don't believe that Jordan is a grifter at all. I think that he has takes that a lot of people disagree with, and I think that so this kind of goes to the heart of what I'm getting at with this stream, which is if you see Hassan's take, I'm not comfortable with Hassan just shitting on him. And someone asked this about this earlier. Let me see who it was. I think it was. I apologize, guys. Someone made a comment a little bit ago that just kind of harkens back to what we said at the start of this, which is I'm not comfortable just leaving it as, hey, who cares that he's taking dunks on him that aren't accurate when it's Jordan Peterson. I'm not comfortable with that because it leads to hyperbolic interpretations of individuals, which exacerbates the situation. So then when you engage with the Jordan Peterson fan and you are saying things like what Hassan is saying, which are inaccurate, why is that individual going to listen to you? I fucking wouldn't. If you come at me and say, Newsmax is a source of great truth and is where you get your information on the election, I already have a great reason to not listen to anything else you say. You know what I mean?
I kind of know what you mean in that the one skill I have is I'm very good at talking to Republicans.
That is a
And
good
I'm
skill to have.
talking even down the rabbit hole,
Mm-hmm.
Republican. Um, and that's where you don't necessarily say, "Oh, OAN is Nazi shit." I guess I shouldn't have said that on the stream. I
I
don't
mean,
know.
no, I mean, like, I don't know if it's Nazi shit, but it's definitely propaganda. It's definitely, right wing propaganda. That doesn't mean it's, explicitly Hitler esque, right? But it's absolutely some Yikes!
Well,
Shit.
there were definitely some Nazis interviewing Nico House on that channel. So I'll just say that. And Nico House is another grifter. But like you don't want to approach Republicans by saying, "Oh, everything that you do and everything you support is bad," because they're gonna be like, I'm not gonna listen to you." But you do want to like if I'm talking to a Republican, like when we did door knocking, like I would knock on a door, not knowing necessarily who was on the other side, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I would say to them, "Oh, I'm here on behalf of blah 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 blah. Can I? Do you like your current healthcare per se?"
Mm-hmm.
And they'd be like, "It's okay, but it's not great," or something. I'm like, "Well, can I talk to you about this thing we're trying to get people to support in the area?" You know what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
you don't denigrate them.
Right.
You
Yeah.
talk to them about the issues. That's why, like, if you go through this chat, I've asked people what policies you support
Mm-hmm.
because really people identify a number of ways. It doesn't come down to how people identify, it comes down to what people support.
Right.
And I live in Pennsylvania and I sure as hell I just wish at the state level in Pennsylvania, unfortunately Republicans won more than Democrats did. And I wish that the Democrats would learn that lesson because if they did, we would have won more. And obviously there are other issues relating to like state
Mm-hmm.
lines and fair districts when it comes to the House and Senate, which our lines are ridiculous. We literally have one street in the Philadelphia area where three reps are represented.
Yeah.
So,
Yep. The districts are screwed up for sure.
I mean, there's a lot of things, but Ezron, yeah, I do care about electoralism. Like it's the most important thing. It doesn't get enough talking about. Um, but yeah, um, that's a huge fight that we have to deal with.
Oh, absolutely. But yeah,
So,
yeah. In short, with the Jordan Peterson, just because I feel I need to drive it home. I have a lot of disagreements with the guy. I just think that they are overblown. Even if it like if he comes and gives a good faith take, like if he gives this take on religion, right? We can disagree with it. We get like I said before, I disagree with it because I don't think that you're concerned about this group that you call a cultural Marxist. I don't think that their backing of any idea when it comes to some sort of civil right. I don't think that them backing the group should outweigh your desire for the civil right to be expanded to all groups so there's no discrimination. That would be my hit against him. But I get what he's saying in as insofar as his concern about what cultural Marxists are trying to do to things that he believes to be traditional institutions. I get his perspective. I disagree with it though, and I think my disagreement is going to be far more informative to someone who is a Jordan Peterson fan or someone who wants to engage with the Jordan Peterson fan than something performative like Hassan's. But Hassan has a major platform and gets a significant amount of viewership on his content, and therefore he has an obligation to be responsible. Is it an obligation that is forced upon him by any kind of terms of service? No. Is he a journalist? No. But when you're operating in a journalistic capacity and you take on a viewership, it's the same reason we don't give Joe Rogan a pass every time he says, I'm just a comedian. It's like, but you're also platforming people with ideas and you need to be responsible for it. You have two options. You either say, I don't care about that responsibility, or you say, I care about the responsibility and act accordingly. But you don't get to just fucking hand wave that responsibility and say, I'm just a comedian, stop listening to me, because people are listening to you.
right. I mean, I kind of want, so like, I do actually think that Jordan Peterson is a grifter though, because people that trust his good takes may listen to his bad takes.
But that doesn't make him a grifter. A grifter implies that he is operating in bad faith with disingenuous ideas that he doesn't actually believe.
But a
Um,
grifter, though, is someone that has good takes and bad takes.
You can absolutely have good takes and bad takes. Tim Pool was peppering in a few good takes about the election every time that it looked like the Trump train was going to finally crash. And then
And that's
when
kind of the thing. That's how grifters grow their following.
if you're a grifter, I think
Right.
Jordan Peterson has grown his following just by being Jordan Peterson and being genuine about his beliefs. I don't think because here's a good example. So this upset me. Can you still see the stream?
Yeah.
Okay, let me pull something up real quick. Let's look at this first thing. And this also just once again highlights an issue I have with Hassan's approach to this. So let me pull that up. I gotta find a way to make that not have to be redone every fucking time. Okay.
There's a lot of new people. There's a lot of newcomers in this community. Now, what that means is you probably don't know the full extent of my political ideology. You probably don't know politics. And Jordan Peterson is because Jordan Peterson does do
Okay, buddy.
absolutely. Yeah, I'm confused. Everything I've seen from JPP has been positive and really helped me. And I'm a female. All right, well, I think your mind is going to be changed by the end of this session. My man went through a lot. I don't give a fuck that he went through a lot. I do not give a single fuck that he went through a lot. First of all, yes, addiction is a significant problem. He had a benzo issue. Okay. He almost was. He was comatose and shipped over to a fucking wild Russian hospital because his daughter was just basically guiding his lifeless corpse at that point. Add another 12 to the 12 rules that he originally came out with.
Did work and it did make our society better, but would you argue that still wasn't right?
Don't want to wear fucking masks. That kind of rugged, individualistic, conservative mentality was absolutely at the heart of Jordan Peterson's ideology. So let's take a look.
Making people bake a cake for a gay wedding.
Making them do it?
Yeah.
I don't think that's a very good idea.
But here's the argument. So
Okay, so you can hear this now, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Sorry, folks. The picture-in-picture went away. All right, here we go.
should they be able to deny making a cake for a black couple if they don't like black people?
Allowed to? Probably. That doesn't mean it's right.
Okay, so then we had the civil rights movement
Yep.
where they said black people, we had to serve them in your restaurants and
Yep.
stuff like that, and it did work, and it did make our society better, but would
Yep.
you argue that that still wasn't right?
Join the
No,
for the
that was
Anonymous
right.
with AOC State for the big brain energy.
Why is that different to now if you didn't want to make a cake for a black
I
people?
cannot hear that actually.
Maybe it's not. Maybe it's not different.
Is your stream still muted?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, go ahead and unmute. I'll mute my thing while I play this, and then when I come back in, you can mute again. Okay.
Okay.
But to catch you up real quick, what Jim Jeffries has posited is the situation where he's talking about like forcing people to bake a cake for a gay couple versus then he talked about civil rights and like how civil rights and forcing people to like serve black people at a diner was better for society. So that's where we're at right now.
Got it.
All right, I'm gonna mute here.
Can you
So,
suggest a healthy replacement
again,
aside from yourself
brilliant,
for targeted
brilliant
demographics
man.
that
I
are
mean,
exploited
so
by
brilliant that he got
individualism,
rolled
individualism
by
rhetoric? Agree
Jim
with you.
fucking
Would like to know how
Jeffries,
people
okay?
can best move away from JP.
You understand? A comedian, an Australian comedian, rolled him over, the intellectual giant. Incredible stuff. Incredible stuff.
Maybe I was wrong about that.
Making people bake a cake for a gay wedding.
Making them do it?
Anyway,
Okay, so I guess we missed. Watch.
Do? Probably.
With subtext.
That doesn't mean it's right.
Okay, so then we had the civil rights movement
Yep.
where they said black people, we had to serve them in your restaurants and
Yep.
stuff like that, and it did work, and it did make our society better, but would
Yep.
you argue that that still wasn't right?
Join the
No,
for the
that was
Anonymous
right.
with AOC State for the big brain
Why
energy.
is that different to now if you didn't want to make a cake for a black people?
Maybe it's not. Maybe it's not different. Maybe
Can you
So-
suggest a help?
So cool. All right. Hey there.
so
Yeah.
Okay. So, my issue here, here are my notes from that when I was going over this off stream yesterday. I made a note that said, Hassan pauses, and then I made a note to myself, waiting for the super clever quip to come from Hassan, because that's how he operates. He watches, pauses, makes his joke, and then if fucking something happens that would contradict his joke, he doesn't acknowledge it. And one thing he doesn't do here is that Jordan Peterson gets walked through a line of logic, and instead of finding some way to wriggle out of it, finding some way to keep his point going, he fucking concedes. He says, "You're right," and the way Hassan frames it, the fact that he doesn't acknowledge that's Hassan acting in bad faith. And I think that's a testament to saying Jordan Peterson is not one to back down. I don't know if you watched that interview. I think it was GQ or something like that a couple years ago. Like, he has no problem saying exactly what he feels and believes in any public forum, recorded or not. And so here, you watch the man get walked through a line of logic and then concede. I think it's hard for me to really see him engage like that and think that, man, that's a guy who'll go through anything to keep up his beliefs.
I'll give you that one. I mean, at least from here, from what I saw here, he kind of just, it's like, yeah, you're right. I get it.
Yeah, no, and I will say that even for myself, like, this was something that I struggled with. Even after I became okay with gay marriage, I'm sorry, let me rephrase. After I came to avidly support, because it's not like I just fucking shrugged my shoulders and said, fine, do what you want. After I became a supporter of gay marriage, it was still a concept I had to think through and struggle through because it's like, I empathize with the religious folks who don't want it. That doesn't mean I agree with it. That doesn't mean I condone it. That doesn't mean I think we should stop trying to fight them to change their views. But I have to find this balance of where I'm comfortable forcing people to engage with something they don't believe in versus forcing people to do what's right. And I had to come to the conclusion myself that it is right to make them, bake that fucking cake. That is the right choice. And so it's like, fuck, man, I lost my train of thought. But my point is that I understand where he's coming from, and to see him make this this leap. I'm sorry, forgive me. What did you say before I started rambling about shit?
God, I'm like trying to remember.
I'm not good at this debate lord shit. Like,
no,
fucking...
I think I basically said like Jordan Peterson is a grifter. Because I mean, maybe he's not. Maybe he's right, but how do you phrase it? You kind of phrased it like he believes what he believes, and that's it. It's just a little bit of a problem, I guess. Like, and this is where I kind of like and admire streamers when they like, I'm just talking like certain people when they say like, oh, you know what, I was wrong on this issue and I've learned. Like I guess like examples would be like the Humanist Report or whatever, or free speech absolutists who now are no longer free speech absolutists. But I guess with Peterson, he believes what he believes, and that's it. It's just that pulls in a huge audience that's not necessarily going to, I guess, agree on everything, and that's kind of where the problem comes in.
Well, I think one of the things is that Jordan brings in a lot of people for a lot of different reasons. It's not just his political talking, though that was a big factor. His self-help stuff is also very good. Now, one of the problems I had with Hassan in the beginning of this video is that he shits on self-help and just makes a blanket statement that it's a grift. But it's not. Self-help is just something that it's in many ways like therapy, except you don't have someone right there with you in a room 1 hour a week, 2 hours a week, to actually talk with you. It's an individual makes a body of work, and it's what you do to help yourself with that stuff. Right.
Right.
And sure, a lot of it can be bullshit. A lot of diets can be bullshit. A lot of self-help work can be bullshit. Like a lot of that, here, take this, do great things with it. It can all be bullshit. But Jordan's is very much rooted in a lot of actual psychological reality, such as making your bed, right? For people with depression,
Right.
people with ADHD, people with anxiety, making your bed and folding your laundry are two things that many therapists will tell you to do. because they're simple. They're something you have absolute control over, and doing so has a psychological benefit, right? So this is the long roundabout way for me to say Jordan Peterson's 12 rules gets discounted all the time because people hate Jordan Peterson. And that cycles back to all the other ways that he's hyperbolized because it fits people's narrative of why they shouldn't like him. But to go back to what you were saying, that's one of the reasons he pulls people in. It's not just the political stuff. It's not just conservative ideals or defensive conservatism. It's the self-help as well. So he's getting people from all different angles. And I just think we need to be precise in where we criticize him.
I mean, I think that's fair. We should be that way and with anyone and everyone. And that's why, like, it's really important, especially now, and even within the last few years, really pay attention to some arguments that people make because they are just bad.
Yeah.
They are just bad. I mean, perfect example is God, what did I say? Perfect example? I said like perfect example. Perfect example is like, oh, student debt shouldn't be canceled for everyone because rich people can't afford it. And my student debt is actually totally paid off. Like, I'm good. But that doesn't mean that I don't want other people who haven't had student debt to have theirs paid off.
Right. And I think that it's a natural. So that's another thing. Like, I don't just blanket shit on everyone who feels that way because I understand the knee-jerk emotion of, I paid off $100,000, $50,000, whatever, of debt myself. I worked hard. And now everyone's going to get it. I think that's a natural response that I understand, but that doesn't make it like a valid one, right? Or it doesn't
Right.
mean, but we would approach it. I think it's better to approach it instead of saying, oh, well, you had to suffer, so I guess everyone else does. It's a little better to say, well, here's why that's wrong. First of all, you can talk about the emotional knee jerk, and then you can talk about the actual societal benefits of it being paid off without means testing. Now, I personally believe that it should be means tested because at the end of the day, if you are making $30,000 with unskilled labor, and I'm sorry, I'm being attacked. Okay, well, I guess we're changing our shirt today. If you're making $30,000 a year with unskilled labor, and then you go get a college degree, and out of college you're going to make $60,000, and your payments are going to cost you $5,000 to $10,000 a year, your quality of life has still gone up. I think you should pay off your student loan debt. But there are many cases where that needs to be challenged, and I'm in fully support. I'm in full support of paying off the debt where it's going to benefit society and where it's going to, benefit the people that are getting it paid off.
I'm gonna fully disagree with that, like by like 100,000%. All that should be canceled because the economy isn't top down. Like, the rich are gonna sit in their money. That is so funny. Oh my god, the cat's on your head.
He does this.
That's so funny. Sorry. Basically, the point is the rich are going to sit on their money regardless of or not they have the cancellation of student debt. Having it be paid off and go back into it's not going to help the economy. What's going to help the economy is all student debt canceled. So the rich, if they want to buy a fifth yacht, they can.
I'm sorry, I'm not understanding the correlation between the rich's money and the paying off of student debt.
I'm saying all student debt should be canceled.
Right, but why?
Because the economy is not top down. The economy is bottom up. So how many times this year was like, I think early on, you had the CARES Act, then you had another time where money was dumped into the economy to save all these businesses. Didn't save all these businesses. What did, though, was the measly $1,200 that was given to people for ever so temporarily. and it
Right, but wait, hold on. But student loans have been also paused until December 30th. So I don't understand the.
my point is if we canceled all student debt, those that are struggling post December 30th, they'll have extra money that would otherwise go to student debt
Well,
or paying
so
off their debt
there's a
that will
really
go
good
into the
chance.
economy.
There's a really good chance that the student debt is going to be that thing will be extended, even if it's not extended from December 30th to January 20th. If it's not, like if no one in the administration does it, I almost guarantee you, as soon as Biden's inaugurated, it's going to be one of the first things that happens. But even then, like the what you're saying is as if the every individual who has a student loan is incapable of paying it off, is struggling right now, where that's, relieving a burden. While it's definitely relieving a burden for a lot of people right now, at the end of the day, if tomorrow the economy went back to normal, you know, there's still going to be plenty of people who are able to pay that student debt, and it's not having a negative impact on their life. But there is a group where that spending power that's not going into the economy, that's houses and cars that aren't being bought, etc. And those are the people that we need to forgive the loans of. I just don't see a reason to forgive everyone's loans.
I mean, I agree with the former portion of what you said. Like, we should obviously bail out the poor and the middle class and cancel all their student debt. But we should also do it for the rich because we want an egalitarian.
Oh, no. See, I'm not even talking about the rich. I'm talking about like just poor and middle class. There are plenty of middle class folks that can pay off their student debt. I'm middle class. I could pay off my debt. There are plenty of middle class that can't, though, whether it's because they have a family or whether, some hardship has hit them. So all I'm saying is pay off the debt for those who need it, because there's a societal benefit to a well-educated populace. And there's a benefit to a populace that isn't in a significant amount of debt. And one of the other issues is that school is overpriced. And the more that we've told our kids you have to go to school, schools have reflected that by increasing the cost of tuition well beyond what the actual experience of college is costing the college, right? So with all that, there's a lot of intersectional reform that's necessary when it comes to schooling. But when it comes to specifically the topic of student debt, I don't agree with paying off the debt for people who can pay it off while still contributing to society, both in their career and in the way they spend their money.
But I do, and the main reason is because our politicians get money from these institutions that hike up the pay that students have to pay.
Well, of course they do, because they want to have the politicians, favor when it comes to legislation that's going to provide X, Y, or Z for a school, whether it's a building permit, whether it's some sort of aid from the federal government, the state government, etc. I mean, but again, you're talking about campaign finance, not campaign finance, but the donor influence.
But it's related, and that's the thing.
In what way?
In what way? Well, if a student wants their debt canceled, but their rep doesn't support the cancellation of all student debt, bada bing.
Well, just because, I mean, there's nothing wrong with the rep not supporting student debt. If I was a representative, I wouldn't support the cancellation of all debt. I would support cancellation of debt based on circumstance.
And that's where I'm just...
Well, like, you and I it's nothing wrong with us disagreeing on, policy. Like, and that's the disagreement we're having. I believe that the policy should involve canceling the debt for those that are in need and those that will have a benefit on the economy.
But it will benefit entirely the economy if all student debt is canceled. That's the thing.
Hold on 1 second. Whoa. Almost dropped him. Let me look something up real quick. All right. how much student debt exists in the United States. About 43 million adult Americans, roughly 1/6 of the U.S. population older than age 18, currently carry a federal student loan and owe 1.5 trillion in federal student loan debt, plus an estimated 119 billion in student loans from private sources. So it seems like 1.5 trillion in federal student loans and then 119 billion from private sources. So that would be 1.6 trillion dollars of debt that needs to be paid off. I think that you get the balance of not doing a costly debt payoff or debt forgiveness that costs the government money, the taxpayers' money, and instead you get a better result by having those who can and are paying back their loans pay them back, and then only having those who are defaulting or struggling to pay them off, or who's having a severe life impact. Like if you are, I don't know if that term house poor is now an unappreciated term, but like if you are student loan poor, where your quality of life is completely crippled by your debt, you get the payoff. But I don't believe that paying off, 1.6 trillion is the best route for the government. This is where I'll often say that I'm a progressive liberal with a conservative approach. I believe in the progressive idea of paying off, college for a good chunk of the population. I'm conservative in that I don't want to throw 1.6 billion if we only would have to throw 500 million at it. If we would have to only throw, 2 billion at it, or whatever it might end up being. Like, that's a fuck ton of money.
I mean, there's no reason not to cancel it all.
But there is the economic impact of paying 1.6 trillion.
I mean, are you fear mongering about the debt right now? I mean, is that what's
No,
happening?
I'm saying I'm for the government not spending money where it needs to.
You're for the government not spending money where it needs to.
Where
What?
where it doesn't need to. So if the government, like if let's say that hypothetically, because I haven't Googled further into this, let's say that hypothetically of that 1.6 trillion, 500 billion is either defaulted on or on the verge of defaulted on, or falls into that category where people are freeing up spending power and making their lives easier. If that was 500 billion, I would obviously rather pay that 500 billion than the extra 1.1 trillion dollars on top of that just to forgive everyone. Does that make sense?
Honestly, I'm not really understanding.
So I'm saying that from my perspective, your perspective is everyone gets paid off, right? My perspective is that people who are struggling under the weight of their student loans, defaulting on it and having their lives negatively impacted by that, or living so paycheck to paycheck because of their student loans, eating $600 to $1,000 a month, those people should have their debt paid off. But people like me who are able to take out a student loan and comfortably pay it off. Like I could go get a 4-year degree part-time, and then when that stops with my current job, I could easily pay that off month to month and not have it negatively impact me. So people like me, I don't think should have their student loans paid off. But those other people in need, I think they should. So now what I'm saying is, if those people in need add up to say 500 billion or 500 million, that leaves still 1.1 trillion in student loan debt that I don't think the government should pay off just because, especially if people are making their monthly payments without struggle.
Yeah, I guess I see your point. I just don't agree with it at all. Just on the basis of being a humanist, I don't agree with it.
But if I take out a loan, if I make an investment in myself, like if I invest in my house, right? I want to make some improvements. I bought a house. I want to make some improvements so that it is a nicer place to live, and so that it has a little more value should I ever want to sell it. And I take out a $50,000 loan to do that. I am obligated to pay that, right?
Right, but if we're getting into housing, I think housing should be provided via the government, and that's it.
Cool.
Like I
Well,
shouldn't
let's
have to.
sure, but let's operate in the paradigm that we live in now, which is that I can take out a loan to make I can make the decision to take out a loan to make my investment more valuable, correct?
Right.
Okay. In that case, I am responsible for that loan. In the same sense, I am empathetic to students who have been told their entire lives they have to go to college. That is the only way to get a good job. That's the best way to have whatever. I am empathetic to those people who end up in those situations and then end up getting a degree in something that doesn't yield a good salary at the end of the day once they graduate. And now they're struggling under debt because they went to school making 25 and they graduated making 35 to $40,000, right? I am empathetic to them. I want to help those people out because it's still good they went to college, they made themselves better people, and they are contributing to society. I want those people to have their debt wiped out. But the person who makes an investment in themselves and goes to Harvard and then follows on to Harvard Law School or Ohio State or Michigan State or whatever and racks up $50,000 to $100,000 in debt, if that person graduates and they're making $100,000, $125,000, they can afford to pay their student loans. There is no reason for us to wipe their debt out for no reason. Real quick, before you answer that, I'm not saying that going to college is an immediate ticket to better personhood, but you go to college, you get exposed to different people, you get exposed to different ideas, and you become a more educated individual. So I would say that I believe education to be a way to self-betterment. Does that mean that being educated versus not educated is... Please don't go down that route. We don't need to have that kind of silly argument. I'm saying that it makes you a better person going to college. It doesn't mean you're better than those who don't, though.
I mean, I can agree with that statement. I understand your perspective of people that can pay off any amount of student debt. You think it shouldn't be canceled. I understand that perspective. I just don't fully agree with it.
And I understand.
Like,
I
hate
understand.
Jeff Bezos, for instance. I know he could go to school until we're all whatever. I don't even know. But like, I kind of operate from the premise that student debt shouldn't even be a thing in the first place because education should be free. Or like, I think maybe in Sweden or Denmark, I forget which country, you should be paid to get an education by the government.
I think that might be a future. I'm sorry, go ahead and finish your point.
I mean, like you said, like, being educated is a net plus to society or the economy. So I operate from that premise. Like, I wouldn't have gotten my master's degree in what I got it in, which is library science, if we had education for all. You know what I mean? Like,
do you say you would have or wouldn't have?
Wouldn't have.
What would you have done if you did have education for all?
Probably gotten a PhD in gender studies or physical therapy. I don't know, but it wouldn't have been library science. I did the library science bit because I wanted job security and a job with benefits.
I mean, and that's a fair and reasonable approach to your education. Like, there's nothing wrong with approaching education from what's going to make, your job better, right? But I mean, if you get, there are a lot of factors that go into why people choose the career field. One, job security. Another could be pay. Another could be, the career field is something that interests them, whatever it might be, right? I don't know if there's a correlation between, that, unless we had a society with like universal basic income, right? Because I think that people are still, even with free college, going to make the decision on where they want to live based on, or I'm sorry, what they want to study. It's still going to be a major factor, which is, not necessarily like the student loans, but it's going to be what comes after. Like, people get high paying jobs, not just to offset student loans. Like, I got to go to college, but I also have to get loans, so therefore I got to
Well,
get a
I
job
didn't
that
do it
affords it.
necessarily to offset student loans. I did it because I knew there would be job security because have, I mean, I didn't have health care.
Yeah, no, exactly. So,
I,
like,
I
that's still going to be a decision that people make is what quality of life can I have with the career that I'm setting myself up for? That's still going to be a
Right.
decision, even if college was free across the board.
Right, and that's where I also operate from the premise that healthcare shouldn't be tied to employment. It should just be provided. So a lot of these things, just the
I,
entire system would be different. It would all be different, or the way we operate would be different.
we also live in a society of 350 million people that it's very difficult to compare ourselves to other countries. Like
I
the
mean,
things that are
yeah,
going to work for small countries with higher, I don't know what I might be using the wrong terms here, but that has a higher GDP per person or per capita. Um, it's much easier for them. But again, I'm not good at the socialism argument, so I really can't go deep into that. I won't even pretend because I fucking hate people who pretend to be able to talk about shit. So I will say that overall, it sounds like your issues aren't just with the education system, but with a whole bunch of other things that need to be brought into the system. But even then, even if those existed, I'd be like, well, fuck, man, no one's paying, expensive healthcare premiums, and no one has to worry about, everyone's getting a universal basic income, whatever. I'm like, you have even more reason to pay off your student loans. Like they're just, there's too much money to be spent making college free when instead we could focus on making college affordable.
disagree because there's way too much money being spent on the military, for instance, when all of essentially the military is really done within recent years, and I'm talking recent in the frame of 20 to 40 to 50 to 60 years, minus World War II because that's a different story.
Mm-hmm.
um, is coups or never-ending wars, all for the sense of oil and propagating our global capitalist rule. Like, there's nothing good about that. Like, there's nothing good about that outside of maybe you could argue, I mean, probably not in good faith, but you could argue, oh, the cost of oil has gone down because we are essentially raping black and brown countries with our military grade weapons, which are in effect also being used on protesters and have been within the last 8 months.
So
So,
I am going to disagree with you on defense spending. I think there are a lot of places that we're putting troops and money around the world that we need to stop. So I'm not a bootlicker.
no, that's what I'm saying. Like, I'm saying we shouldn't be spending money.
Sure. Well, hold on. But I'm disagreeing with you in that I still think that military spending is incredibly important. Our military and defense industry provides a lot of jobs. And while I would be for the drawdown of the military industrial complex, in fact, I'm not just for it, I think it should be avidly worked towards. I still think that the defense industry, our military being powerful and large is incredibly important. Also, the technologies that develop aren't just weapons. Sure, we're making really cool ways to, use your smartphone to launch a pen-sized missile up someone's ass from half the world away. Yeah, but at the same time, a lot of these technologies end up turning into something that gets brought back into civilian society, that ends up getting sold to not just enemy governments, but to the civilian populace. I think that there is a lot of good in the defense industry, and I don't think that the spending conversation is ever done in a really rational way. It's usually someone that's like, how about more books and less bombs? And someone else is like, we need to have a good military. And that just stops there.
I mean, I understand the idea of having a military, but I don't understand of having all these places all over the world where we need to be.
Yeah, sure. We can
And
absolutely
I
draw back.
understand also that there are people that work on behalf of the MIC and they need a job. now this gets me back to the whole why do they need a job thing? What does that job provide them? It provides them pay. It provides them likely health care. It provides them likely whatever else, right? So let's think about that a second. So, like, this is the same thing when people say, oh, we shouldn't have Medicare for all because there are people that work in the pharmaceutical industry and work in these healthcare companies. Well, as someone that is a librarian but works like in a lot of like with a lot of spreadsheets and stuff, because there's different types of librarians. There's like public service facing ones, there's archivists, there's reference librarians, there's teaching and literacy librarians, there just you name it, it exists. The people, I can't really speak to exactly what all these people do in the MIC or on behalf of these like organizations, what have you, companies, but I can at least say that I know a lot of them operate in spreadsheets, as most people in any job likely do at some point in time. They go to Excel or whatever, Google Sheets or what have you, or Airtable, whatever it is. So all of these skills can be put towards some other industry. They don't necessarily need to be supporting the MIC. So even if we were to rule back put more regulations on these companies such as Boeing that make whatever for the military, and even if we cut back on some of their jobs, they could still go into other industries by using the same skills.
Oh, sure, they could go into other industries, but I mean, it's a far more complex situation than that, where you have to find industries that actually, need those people. If you cut out the military, if you cut out defense departments, let's say you just draw it down by half, and we'll just use one sector. We'll talk about anything IT related, whether it's software developers or your network technicians, your cloud technicians, whatever it might be, anything IT related. You are going to have a significant drop in people. Boeing employs like 100,000 people or something like that, or Northrop Grumman, I think, employs something like 110,000 people. A good chunk of that is IT people. That one company alone would flood the market with very skilled labor, but that now has to find a home, that now has to find footing in their career that matches where they've been and all that. At the same time, you can't just take these companies and say, okay, you are now going to redirect a good portion of your work towards civil infrastructure. Like, there has to be either a defense motive or a profit motive going forward. Now, for those companies, they're going to get profit regardless because it's going to be tax dollars that pay them, right? But it's a far more complex system than just saying we need to pull back. So what I'm comfortable saying is that we have involvement in places that we shouldn't have involvement. We do deals with our weapons and technology through the military industrial complex that we should not do. But at the same time, I think it's incredibly important to have a strong military, a well-paid and well-cared-for military, and a system of defense contractors and defense development that continues to keep us on the cutting edge of technology going forward, because we're never going to have a world that's just peaceful. We have to be prepared. So I think we're just going to disagree on how to address the military industrial complex.
I guess. I mean, I think we can at least agree somewhat on, like, if you think about, like, I'm going to, like, talk about defund the police as a framework for now. And people have said defund the military as a framework. That framework, I love it, but it's bad. It's a bad framework. As far as words.
It's bad messaging.
Yeah, bad messaging. That's what I mean. So like what I think we agree on, at least in the sense of the military, is defund military bloat.
Yeah, absolutely. I think an even better example would be the Drug Enforcement Agency and the IRS. Like, the IRS is the reason that most people could have their taxes done like that. And the way they could do it is by pushing a button that files your taxes, because most people just file a single W-2 with a few modifiers, right? Most people aren't itemizing their taxes. So
Right.
the IRS could do that, but the Intuit Corporation lobbied to make it illegal for the IRS to do your taxes, right? So with that one law changed, which was made for bad reasons, with that one law changed, the bloat of the IRS could be completely like devoid. But the problem is, where do you put those people? But with the Drug Enforcement Agency is primarily tasked with a bunch of drug war related shit that we have learned is outdated and isn't doing well for the country. It's actually hurting the country. It's hurting neighboring countries and countries in other parts of the world. And so instead, we could take the DEA and invest money in the aspects of drug control that actually work, such as education, rehabilitation, decriminalization, etc., and then transfer those jobs into things that are far more relevant to those fields. Send people to school for psychology, send people to school for counseling, turn these people into individuals who run different aspects of that enterprise and fix this drug crisis, with the idea that in the future we'll have it so under control that these people are going to have to go out and do whatever, but we incentivize them to retrain and re-educate and go to school and whatever, right? So yeah, we can agree in the bloat. The problem is where do we not hurt people in the process?
Yeah, and I think that at some level, like, we don't really have a full-on framework for that. Like, obviously a lot of this is just conjecture. Like,
Mhm.
I'm a jagoff kid from the Philadelphia area
Mm-hmm.
that is 30. So I'm not a kid anymore. I don't know why I said kid, because I'm getting aggravated when people online call me that, because they do. God, that was funny. Little bit of a funny addendum by myself. Okay, point. What was I trying to say here? I kind of like that you went into like bringing up the whole like DEA and decriminalization and stuff like that. Because one argument that I've always had with myself, like not an argument, just one. So you always hear on the right people cry about, oh, too many people are coming here from South American countries.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that? Why are they coming here?
Well,
I
a
mean,
lot of people that are crying about it don't care. And even when they
well,
do
yeah.
find out, it's the that goes into, the right wing narrative that's very xenophobic and has created a large number of people that think that outsiders are coming here to take jobs and make the lives of Americans harder, to leech off our benefit systems and to take things that aren't rightfully theirs. And so you have that system and you have those people who believe it. And then it in turn leads to, it doesn't matter why that caravan of people is here. It doesn't matter why there is a sudden influx of refugees. People are thinking about us and not us as a country and not us as a world.
Well, right, but like I guess my point is in relation to what you said. Like, if we were to, one, decriminalize all drugs in the US, that would curb immigration from South American countries because of one very important factor. The dealers in South American countries then wouldn't have a US market to sell to.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, like
And
there's already been adjustments in trade because of the marijuana laws and legalization
exactly.
of marijuana. Yeah.
Exactly. And so that's a really, really cool way to kind of like talk to like conservatives that aren't on board with that.
Yeah. No, I mean, we definitely need to adjust the way we engage with those subjects. Absolutely. But that said, there's a lot of room for speculation. There isn't a lot of room for action because the wrong action, as we've seen with things like the crime bill and the war on drugs, the wrong actions lead to worse shit. And I don't think that just because we open ourselves up to more, like, I don't think that's always necessarily the right way to go. So I'm for measured change. So if we're going to change the military, I want it to be measured. If we're going to change, going back to our original topic, education benefits, I want them to be measured. Sure, it feels really good that you could give everyone in the country free education, but the reality is the 1% up likely has very little share of the student loan debt, because the 1% up has probably paid their shit off real quick, right? So that means most of that debt are going to people that are either in need of relief or who are doing just fine and have made an investment in themselves and they can continue to pay their loan.
Right, but I
So,
guess like the thing is, it's not free, right? It's paid for via the taxpayer. And the more you make, the more you're taxed at a top marginal tax rate. Depending on how the government defines that, that all depends, right? So I'm honestly for like a 90% tax rate on a marginal tax rate of on the marginal tax of it above, say, like the $200,000 people make a year. So that would basically leave no room for billionaires.
yeah, see, you
And
and I are going to completely disagree here. I don't hate rich people for being rich, and I don't think it's their responsibility to fund the nation. And while I do think that there should be cuts and loopholes that prevent these people from paying a shit ton of money that they weasel out of, at the same time, I don't think that they should be just taxed to hell just because they're wealthy. This is where I start to lose a lot of socialist viewers.
yeah. I mean, like the thing is, we've gone back and forth about this. I don't hate the wealthy. I actually want them to have all their debt canceled. That doesn't mean though that I want them to be taxed. That I don't want them to be taxed at a top marginal tax rate. Of I'm not in the government, obviously, but like a rich person makes that has 5 yachts and 5 cars and 4 houses,
I mean,
they
if
should be taxed at a certain amount
I'm
to better
cool with,
fund Medicare for all, better fund free education, better fund all these things that they have and are likely to take more advantage of.
I believe that just because you are wealthy doesn't mean you are obligated to, like, I mean, first of all, I think the 1% of this country pays for 30% of our taxes, first of all. Second of all, I am for increasing the amount they pay, but not by exorbitant taxation. I'm a little more comfortable with that 90% above like 10 million. I'm not comfortable with that 90% above 200,000. That's
I mean, that was just
an
something
extreme.
that was just something I pulled out of my ass. It wasn't necessarily the number.
Well, I mean, so I think it's important to to just define my belief is that I don't hate billionaires for being billionaires. And if in the process of making a fair taxation system, fair in the sense that, you know, people aren't weaseling out of taxes, not fair as in they get 70 to 90% of their wealth taxed. But I believe that if in the process of creating a Medicare for all system, in the process of making education a little more affordable, and other social benefits, it comes down that being a billionaire is very difficult, if not impossible. That's one thing. But I don't look at billionaires as the funding source of everything we want to do, because at the end of the day, billionaires still pay a shit ton of taxes.
Right, but 30% is nowhere near 70%.
No,
I
but
mean,
and
that's kind of the thing. Like,
but if you
even
make
if you're a billionaire and say you're taxed at over, you're taxed on the 90% above 1 million, you still have that 1 million. You still have 10% or whatever percent after that 1 million. You're going to be fine.
that just because they're going to be fine isn't enough for me. Like the fact that they're going to be fine, hey, I'm glad they're going to be fine. That's cool. But that's not how I decide what I believe is the correct policy for taxation. Because the point of taxation isn't to look at a citizenry and say, ah, well, you've earned this much. Well, you'll be okay after this amount. The rest, I'm going to take a lot of that. I don't think that's the right way. We look at taxation as a way to fund our society, and we tax people on a bracket system based on what they can afford. But I don't think the jump from it's like 40 something, like 43%, I think, is the max IRS tax bracket. The problem is that a lot of these people get a lot of write-offs and loopholes that allow them to get their effective tax rate way, way down there. And I'm okay with being a little more lenient towards I'm okay with being a little harsher on the higher brackets and how they use their write-offs and what loopholes they're able to get through. I'm not okay, though, just gouging them for the sake of funding an idealistic society.
Right. I mean, I can agree with closing the loopholes and getting rid of all that stuff, but we still need to tax them heavily.
I mean, yeah, we need to. Whoa.
The thing is, I have friends that are homeless, and they don't deserve to be homeless. When all of these people have so much, and
but that's not on them. That's on systemic issues in our society. Like
right,
that isn't just because the rich are rich.
That systemic issue.
No, but part of the systemic issue is the way that our government has set up institutions that don't properly handle the homeless population. We have no reason for the government not to be able to buy housing, build new housing. Like, the country's fucking huge, with a lot of unused land. Like, so the government could fix the issue of homelessness. That's not a billionaire problem. Now, if the government needs to tax fairly a little more to fix that problem, I'm all for it. But I'm not for saying, here's this exorbitant taxation on every amount above what I deem to be enough for you to fund everything. That's not the way we approach it. We fix the systems. If the systems require a little more taxes, we do it incrementally to get those taxes, but we don't explicitly shit on the rich to get there.
But here's the problem with all of that. Billionaires give money to our legislators to create legislation that helps them out more than it does help the poor and the working class and those that have no one at all legislating for them.
Campaign finance issues or donor relations issues. Absolutely. But that's a system to fix. That doesn't mean that again, you're looking at the wrong place for the problem. You target.
But I'm not, though.
You're looking at the billion. Like, if I had, as an individual with $1,000 in your pocket, you can probably get, the influence. Do you need to take that?
No, it was definitely a California call, and I am not in California.
Okay. Not a war. Where was I going with that? Fuck, I forget. The taxation. I'm sorry. Can you repeat what you said before? Because I have lost my train of thought.
Basically.
Oh, donor. I was just saying that, like, that's an issue with donors, but oh yeah, like, so if you had $1,000 in your pocket, you could get an audience with your congressman for $1,000. You could buy a vote with $1,000. Now, it sounds like absurd, but no, like, if you donate $1,000 and then you request an audience, you've made yourself a valuable person to that congressional individual. And I'm talking like federal Congress. I'm not even talking about like state Congress. You've made yourself a valuable individual, and your voice will be heard. It's far more accessible than people realize. But yeah, there are billionaires pumping a lot of money into PACs that are going to influence more congressmen than just one to work on their behalf. Is that an obscene imbalance of power? Absolutely. But I don't think the solution to that is to tax them until they no longer have the money to influence. I think instead, the issue is for us to get people in office that are actually going to work on behalf of the people over corporations. And does that mean maybe addressing campaign finance? Does that mean donor relations needs to be looked at and evaluated? Abso-fucking-lutely. But I think that it's a separate issue from, billionaires bad versus the system's bad. And I'd rather focus on the system.
I guess the thing is, the system, like, look into what the Powell memo is.
What?
The Powell memo. It's a huge, huge thing that not a lot of people know about. it was basically a memo passed around, I think, in the 70s, to Congress, and it was basically a plan to have Congress and the Senate be bought out by organizations.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a big reason why we got to where we are. Because at a point, I think within the last 60, 70 years, it was actually part of the Democratic Party to be for Medicare for all. Well, what happened? Corporations bought up our Congress. And who works for such corporations? Who's on the board of such of these corporations? Billionaires and millionaires and wealthy, well-off people.
But what does that have to do with, like, I understand, I haven't read this memo before. I have it now and I will look into it. But are you saying that in 1971, when this memo was written, there was a concerted effort, all of Congress was bought up, and we're still dealing with that Congress?
I mean, I'm saying it was a slow but very, very concerted effort over the years, and it's how we got to the gridlock that we are essentially in today.
Right. I still don't think this I don't think this counters what I'm saying, though, because at the end of the day, what I'm still saying is, yeah, the system needs to be addressed. If anything, this is just agreeing with me. There is a problem with the way that finance interacts with Congress, but I'm still saying the solution isn't to tax the rich into oblivion. It's to address why that system works the way it does and make it so that our Congress people are far less susceptible to the corruption that comes with donations, whether that's term limits, whether that's far stricter laws on who can donate, how much one can receive, etc. Maybe that's the abolishment of PACs. I mean, at the end of the day, clout of some form is always going to influence Congress, whether it's individual authority on a subject, whether that's, monetary power. I'd rather address it, though, from the places that don't demonize a class of people, regardless of if it's the upper class.
What I'm calling for doesn't abolish billionaires or whatever into oblivion. It's saying tax them at a certain point to help the greater society.
Yeah, and I'm saying that the point that you want them to be taxed at is criminal. I think that it's using them as a funding source and not looking at them as actual people who have either inherited or earned.
What's really interesting about that, though? We were actually taxing the billionaires at that rate in the 40s and 50s. And it was the most prosperous time in American history within the 20th century. And really almost maybe ever. So
I've never heard that. Give me 1 second.
Mm-hmm.
There's a common misconception that high-income Americans are not paying taxes in compared to what they used to. Proponents of this view often point out to the 1950s when the top federal income tax was 91% for most of the decade. However, despite these high marginal rates, the top 1% of taxpayers in the 1950s only paid about 42% of their income taxes. As a result, the tax burden on the high-income household today is only slightly lower than those households faced in the 1950s. Obviously, there's way more to read into that. But just off that, like, if anything, if that's true, which, again, I'm going off the taxfoundation.org, which I'm completely unfamiliar with. But if that is true, then this kind of just goes along with what I want now, which is just less freedom to use write-offs and loopholes to get down to like a 16% effective tax rate. Because when you're a billionaire, you can afford to pay a much higher tax rate. But I don't believe in taxing them beyond what we've deemed to be reasonable just because we want more money in our government to throw at issues.
And that's where we're going to fervently disagree.
Yes, absolutely. I don't want to sound like I'm pushing you out, but I believe there are two others.
No, you're good. I probably should actually get to doing some work.
All good. Do you have any last thing you want to say? Do you have anything you want to shout out?
I guess thanks for having me on. And I'm loving the trolling comments.
I hope you don't mean for me, because I am acting in good faith.
No, no. Yeah. All right.
Well, it was very nice meeting you.
You too.
Have a good
Bye.
day. Bye.
You too.
My name is Lucky, and please subscribe to my channel, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter. I need your subs and I need your support so I can grow my shit bigger. Please, oh please, I don't need donations, just need your follows and adorations. Please, 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 like, subscribe, and follow.